Well, good evening. Try it one more time. Good evening. Welcome to St. Francis Xavier Parish. I am Deacon Paul Kipstool, for those of you who do not know who I am. I'm one of the permanent deacons who is here at St. Francis. And it is my pleasure tonight to introduce our speaker to you. If the saying is true, that you are what you eat, then Emily is mostly comprised of coffee and cookies. I can vouch for that because that is exactly what we had when we met at Panera during the summer, coffee and cookies. If it were up to Emily, she would have 20 children. Okay, maybe not 20, but a lot. And if her ministry and foundation work helps people navigate the hardships of life and provide some hope for them at their time of need, then she will be greatly satisfied. Emily K. Whiting is the co-founder and executive Hope Director for Charlotte's Hope Foundation, Inc., a nonprofit organization that supports, encourages, and educates parents and caregivers of children with medical complexities, embracing each family's reality with an outlook of hope and empowering them as capable advocates for their child's optimal quality of life. Emily also speaks and writes about God's design for relationships and true intimacy, an intimacy meant to be so deep and fulfilling, it leaves the world's idea of romance lacking at its best. She is a passionate student of theology of the body and cannot keep these beautiful truths to herself. Emily comes to us from Sacred Heart of Jesus Parish in Wadsworth. She was raised in the Catholic Church, and her faith grew deeply personal through her young adult years. Her college degrees and professional career trained her for marketing and journalism, and she now uses these skills for her ministerial work. When not speaking or writing, Emily, along with her husband Dan, go through an awful lot of diapers with 3 children, ages 4, 3, and 1. She spends her days raising her sweet babies and managing and coordinating her eldest child's medical care, who was born with numerous anomalies and has given Emily and Dan a front row seat to watch God perform miraculous healing. Emily has captured the beginning of this heartbreaking and simultaneously hope-filled story in her book titled She is Charlotte, which is set to be published in early December of 2022. So, back in June or July, I had the opportunity to reach out to Emily on what I thought was going to be a completely different matter. And as we sat and talked at Panera, I grew more and more and more amazed at her story. It is a story of conviction. It is a story of passion. It is a story of compassion. And most importantly, and very appropriately for this Respect Life Month, I found it to be a most compelling story of life. Of life. And so, before I turn it over to Emily, let us bow our heads briefly and pray. Good and gracious God, author of life, we thank you for the opportunity to gather tonight to give thanks to you for the gift of life. May we listen with loving hearts to Emily's story tonight and feel that same passion and compassion that she has in caring for her daughter, so that we may care similarly for each other, for each other's lives, as you are the author of life. We ask this in Jesus' name, amen. So without any further ado, let me turn it over to Emily and her story.
Thank you. Good evening. It is a good evening. Can everyone hear me in the back? Okay, fantastic. I am told I need to not wander too much and also not stand, well, you said I could wander, so that's good, but not stand in front of the board. So if I do, just tell me to move over, because I'll have some really cute pictures coming soon. But Paul, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and I agree. When we met in the summer, I didn't know where the conversation was going to go either, and it's just amazing how God works, isn't it? You know, one connection leads to another, which leads to another, and I've had so many conversations in the last few years where I meet with someone and they say, well, what can I do for you, or what are you looking for? And I say, I don't know. I just know that I was told to connect with you, and so here I am. Let's talk. And that's how it went with Paul, and it was very, very much a blessing and led us to here tonight. So with that, I'll just dive right into the story of what brought us here. And some of you in the audience know the story, some of you don't. I think anyone in the audience, no matter how close you are, whether you're my grandma or my aunt or my Papa Dave or friends, you probably are, you know, I don't know that I've quite gone to the depth of sharing that I will tonight. So hopefully it'll be a treat for everyone. But it was back in the summer of 2017, so hard to believe it was over 5 years ago. It was a very hot day, and I was 20 weeks pregnant. And my husband and I, we met at my OBGYN's office for our lunch break during work because we were going in for the 20-week anatomy scan. And nowadays, that's known as kind of the ultrasound that helps people plan for their gender reveal parties, right? The big, you know, balloons popping with pink or blue or what have you. And so we had no plans of having any kind of gender reveal party, but we were very excited to learn. Uh-oh, she's already crying. We're in trouble. Sorry, I didn't mean to call you out. I'm going to be crying too multiple times through the night. So we were going into this ultrasound very excited. We did want to know whether we were having a boy or a girl, and this was very much a pregnancy we were greatly anticipating and very excited about. So the ultrasound tech, the sonographer, walked us back to the room, got us all ready, got the blue jelly out, you know, and up pops the baby on the screen. And the baby was doing all kinds of flips and was kicking, and I could feel it, which was such a treat because, you know, that 20-week mark with the first baby is kind of right when you start feeling things, and so it was so fun. And my husband and I were kind of laughing about, what are we going to name this kid? We don't have any name ideas other than boy names, so if it's a girl, we're in trouble. And so the sonographer said, you know, do you want to know, boy or girl? And of course we said, yes, please tell us. And so she said, you're having a baby girl. So we were overjoyed, and at that point, Daniel, you know, my husband, his face is kind of like white, thinking, oh man, what am I going to do with a little girl? And also the reality of being responsible for a life hit me like a ton of bricks, and so it's this simultaneous, you know, so much joy and also scared out of your mind, right? How am I going to raise a human? But it was very exciting. And so the sonographer continued their scan, and of course, this being our first baby, we had no idea what to expect. So I didn't know it wasn't normal to have an hour-long ultrasound. So we're in there, and she's, you know, scanning, measuring, doing all these things, and finally I'm like, you know, me being curious, I'm saying, well, what's that? I see an arm, I see a leg, what's that? And she answered a few questions at first, and then she went quiet, and she said, you know what, I'll have the doctor come in and explain. I'm not qualified to answer these questions. So I'm like, all right, you know, brush it off. Okay, I guess that's fine. Still completely naive that there might be something going on. So she finally wipes the blue jelly off of my belly, tells me to sit up, and says I'll be back with the doctor soon. Again, being the first baby, I had no idea that it's not normal for the doctor to come and review results right then and there. So we're waiting, my husband and we're waiting some more, and now I'm starting to get an idea that maybe something's up, because there's whispering out in the hallway, and I'm starting to kind of realize they're whispering about us. So the doctor finally walks in, and I don't really know this lady very well. I've met her a couple times, so when she walks over and starts rubbing my back, now I'm alarmed. What in the world is happening? So, of course, me being Emily, trying to lighten the situation, I'm like, you saw she's a girl, right? We're having a girl, and she has 10 fingers and 10 toes. And the doctor, bless her heart, she kept rubbing my back, and she said, yes, you are having a girl, and I have some really hard news about that little girl. She said, I can never get through this part without crying. Yeah, it's rough. She said that we can see from head to toe that she has anomalies. She said that the brain is missing the part that connects the right and left lobe. She said that the heart is pumping, but it's not pumping correctly. We don't know why. She said the front part of the lip is missing, the part that connects the right and left side, and that's called a cleft lip. She said, we can't tell right now, but usually the palate is missing too when there's a cleft lip, so the cleft palate. She said we won't know that till the baby's born. She said the kidneys are enlarged, and we don't know why. And there's this mass in the right part of the abdomen, and it fills the entire half of the right part of the abdomen. We don't know what it is, but it's not an organ. So, as you can imagine, we went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows in a matter of moments, and we just clung to each other, my husband and I. Someday I'll be able to tell this story without crying, or maybe probably not. So, of course, our first question, is denial and how did this happen and what's the future going to look like and all of those things. And so she said, we really don't know what all of this means. We don't know what life looks like for your daughter. We don't know if she'll survive very much longer in the womb, let alone after she's born. And if she does survive, what does the quality of life look like? At that point, she did say, we might need to consider some alternative options, such as termination. Now, at that point, I was just so devastated and emotional. I don't think I even really heard what she said. And so, we packed up our things and walked out the door knowing that they were going to call us with an appointment with the maternal fetal medicine doctor as soon as they could, which is, of course, I didn't know any of these terms until this day and now, but basically that's the doctor for high-risk pregnancies. We were very blessed that the very next day we were able to get into that maternal fetal medicine doctor. And, those 24 hours, we were like attending our daughter's funeral in our hearts and in our heads. We just thought for sure she wasn't going to make it. I mean, how can you have so many anomalies head to toe and still make it? And so we had just finished telling all our family and friends we were expecting a baby, and now instead of sharing with them that we're having a beautiful, healthy baby girl, we're sharing with them, we're having a baby girl and she might not live. So we go to this maternal fetal medicine doctor, and on the way up there, I, being Emily, again, said, Daniel, we need to write down our questions for this doctor because once we get there, I'll have no idea what to ask and I'll, just lose what to say. So we made a list. I still have it. And we met with this doctor, and he did his own exam. And at the end, he walked us to this little private consultation room. And if any of you have been in the hospital, you know what those are like. White-walled, aluminum table, scratchy tissues, Dixie cups of water. You know the drill. So we go into this room, he shuts the door, and he says, I see you have a list. Can you hand it to me? I'll answer the questions as best as I can. So he clearly knows, this is his day-to-day living. He gets it. So I slide this list over to him very reluctantly, because I don't really want to know the answer to the questions. Because some of the questions were, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? What's the most likely outcome? How long do you think she'll live? When she dies, will we get her body? Should we have a funeral? Do we name her? And the list goes on and on. Honestly, asking questions that now looking at it like, man, he had a tough job. Can you imagine answering those questions for this mom and dad who are just clinging to each other and at their wits' end? So he answered each question very patiently, as best as he could, as best as anyone could, and then he slid the list of questions back over to me, and he said, okay, now we have 2 weeks before it becomes illegal. And I looked at him, and I looked at Dan, and I'm thinking, what could possibly be illegal about having a kid with complexities? I'm confused. And so, I was like, what is illegal? And he said, well, in Ohio, the state law in 2017 is, at 22 weeks, it's illegal to terminate. So we have 2 weeks to make a lot of decisions, do a lot of tests, and make, decide what you're going to do. thank God we were raised with faith. We knew the value of life, and it was never even an option. I remember I put my hands over my belly, and I just was like literally looking for, how do I get out of this place? How do I run away as fast as I can? That feeling of mama bear was new to me, but it came full force, and I was ready to attack anyone who touched me. So Daniel spoke up while I was like trying to figure out my exit strategy, and he said, we're not going to terminate, if and when this baby passes, then that's what will happen. So the doctor, he kind of took a minute and he thought about it, and he was like, okay, well, we've spent this appointment talking about your daughter's death and the fact that she might not live and the fact that she might not walk, might not talk, might not all of these things. But the baby I saw in that ultrasound, she was very much alive. And he said, let's focus on her life and let's give her every chance we can to help her live. And it was like a shot of hope in a very hopeless situation. Let's focus on her life, This baby is very much alive. So I was like, okay, let's roll up our sleeves. So I flip over the paper, and I start taking notes like a mad woman of all the things we have to do in the next 20 weeks, if she lives that long, to help make sure we're ready for this baby to be born. So I still have all of those notes, and the list was very lengthy of all the things that we needed to do, from an amniocentesis to an MRI to a cardiologist appointment and fetal echoes and all these surgical pre-op appointments to make sure we have the right people lined up for when she's born. We were in and out of main campus Cleveland Clinic very, very often. I used to travel for work back at the time, but thank God I had amazing coworkers who said, you just stay in Ohio and get this figured out. And so we just basically stayed in Ohio and traipsed to Cleveland constantly. It was the start to a lot of traipsing to Cleveland. So I remember, the following weeks, waking up in the morning and just being petrified in the morning that maybe she died overnight, and waiting to feel that first kick to reassure myself she's still alive. And by a few weeks into this, I started just being so exhausted by this dance of worrying if she was going to live or die or this or that. And so finally, I don't even know what helped me come to this realization, but I'm going to just say it was through a heck of a lot of prayer and divine intervention. But I just realized, you know what? Her life is a gift. It is not a given. And could she die tomorrow? Yes. But me clinging to her life and fearing that I'm going to lose it is only sucking the joy out of having her alive with me right now. And so I started realizing, if I can just wake up every morning and be excited that I get to have one more day with my baby instead of clinging to the fear that I'm going to lose her, that's going to make this pregnancy so much more survivable and practical and so much more beautiful. And that was such a valuable lesson that, we can squeeze the life out of the gifts God gives us out of fear of losing them, but we lose them in the process of squeezing the life out of it, right? Versus opening up our hands and saying, thank you, God, I get another day with this child, or whatever it is that the gift that God gave us. And so that's been my constant practice, because as any of you who know me know, I can tend to go towards control, clench that fist, and just opening that fist to say, okay, God, thank you for this gift today. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I've got this baby now, and life is a given, or as a gift, not a given. That was first of many lessons. The other thing that kept coming to mind at that stage was she was never mine to keep. She was only mine to love. I, as the mother, was only loaned this child to love on her as best as I could and to really enjoy that time with her, but she wasn't mine to keep. She was ultimately God's. And so, on one hand, I feel very blessed, because that was a lesson I learned within a few weeks of pregnancy that I feel like oftentimes takes a lifetime of raising kids to learn. So I was, in one way, I suppose, very blessed by that. So we decided to keep preparing as if she was going to live. And my lovely Aunt Heidi and many other people threw wonderful baby showers, and we weren't, acting as if she was going to be just fine, because we all knew that wasn't the case, but we figured, what, if we can't cling to the hope that she's going to live, then who can, right? So we went ahead, made the nursery. It was with a heck of a lot of debate and discussion and concern in our hearts of like, are we going to do all of this and then come home to an empty nursery after we've buried our child and then, wish that we didn't have this to see as like a shrine in our house? But we decided to charge on anyway and have faith and see what happens. So we did. And it's not in the picture, but my favorite decoration in this room is right here, and it says, "You are beautifully, wonderfully, fearfully made." And I just clung to that truth through the pregnancy because I needed it. I needed that reminder. So we had countless appointments, and as we neared the end of the pregnancy, we got to 36 weeks. Praise the Lord, we got that far. And at 36 weeks, we met with that maternal fetal medicine doctor for the last time before delivery, though we didn't know it at the time. And he said at that exam, the kidneys are starting to get even bigger, the amniotic fluid is going down, and so that tells me that this blockage in the kidneys is getting worse, and if we continue with the pregnancy, she's going to have less chance of being viable because the kidneys are going to be so severely damaged. So it was this horrible game for him. I feel bad that he was in a tough spot trying to figure out, how do I get this baby as big and as strong as possible to survive all the endless treatment she's going to need to make it through, while also delivering her soon so that we don't kill the kidneys in the process of having her in utero. He, thank God, made the right decision. He said, we're going to deliver in a week, so go home, rest up, go on a date, because we don't know what next week brings. The other thing he told us, and it was very wise advice, but man, it was so hard to hear. He said, you know what, you guys really need to talk this week and decide at what point are you going to choose comfort care. Of course, I didn't even know what that meant either. And he said, basically, the do not resuscitate. At what point are you going to cease intervention? And I remember after that appointment, Dan and I went to the Melt Bar in Independence, right outside of his office. And I, talk about melting, I just melted down in that restaurant of just like, how is a mom or a dad ever supposed to know when to stop? So we ultimately decided, after much debate, that our prayer was just going to be, Lord, if you want to take her home, then just do it. Do not put us in that position to decide, please. And if you want her to live, then please just give us the next step and the next step and the next step after that. And we'll just keep walking until you shut the door. We'll just keep going. So we got to delivery day, and my prayer for the last few weeks, on top of, don't make us decide when to cease intervention, was I want to hold this baby and I want to hold her alive. That was just the mantra in my head. I want to hold her alive. And I know she might not be alive for more than a few minutes, but I want to hold her alive. So we get to the hospital. I'm in the throes of labor, and this wonderful neonatologist comes up and introduces himself, and he says, do you have any questions? We're all ready for her in the NICU. We've got all the surgeons lined up. We've got the medications bedside. We've reviewed all the notes, all the pre-op conversations. We're ready. What are your questions? And I just blurted, can I hold her after she's born, after you check her heart and make sure she's viable? Because they did discover, they didn't quite know what was wrong with the heart still, but they knew that the likelihood of having to intervene with the heart surgically early was pretty high. So he kind of chuckled at that question, and he was like, I don't know if I can give you a minute, but I'll give you 30 seconds if she's viable. And honestly, that was the best news I could have ever heard at that moment. So I just wanted to kiss him. And praise the Lord, I did get to hold her. If I can do this. And she was gorgeous. And what blew me away was when she was first born, she was crying like any other newborn baby would, and they laid her on my chest, and she ceased crying immediately and just started looking around. I had no idea a newborn could be so observant and so intelligent. All the moms in the room are nodding their head. Yeah, we know. It was just amazing, absolutely amazing. And I'm so grateful I got to hold her then, because it would be at least 5 more days before I got to hold her again. This was how we had to hold her a lot in the NICU, was just by cupping her head, and sometimes we could cup her feet. This is Daddy's hands, holding her when she was just a day old. And that's Daddy looking through the isolette. I love that picture because it so accurately portrays the life of the NICU, looking through this plastic, trying to hold on to your baby, but you really don't get to hold on to your baby. So she had her very first surgery when she was 5 days old, and the heart never actually did need intervention right up front. So that was a huge prayer answered, huge miracle. And we did not get to hold her till after that first surgery. But there she is, hanging out in her isolette. So stinking cute. So that first time I got to hold her was just so precious, so beautiful. And I remember just getting very reflective in that moment, sitting there rocking her and starting to think about, everything just came at us so fast. I don't think I really ever stopped to think about termination. We said no right off the bat and we moved on, and I never really stopped to think about what would that have actually looked like. And so when I was sitting here rocking her, I was looking around in the NICU and I was realizing there are 24-week-old babies who have a 60 to 70% chance of life. And 22 weeks is when we are legal to terminate. I could have terminated my child, and 2 weeks later she would have had a 70% chance at living, which is just so gut-wrenching. I actually did some research, even though I truly felt like I was going to vomit the whole time I was researching, but I was like, no, Emily, you have to do this, because you can't say that you're, against something if you don't actually know what it is. So I actually reached out to that maternal fetal medicine doctor, and I asked him, I was like, what would it have looked like if we chose termination? Walk me through what would have happened. And he said, well, at 22 weeks, it would have been dismemberment. I was like, what is dismemberment? He was like, well, we would have gotten the cervix to expand. I'm not sure how they do that, through medication or something. And then we would have used forceps, and we would have gone in and pulled out limb by limb, usually legs, arms, torso, and the head is last. And oftentimes the baby is big enough at that point that they crush the head with the forceps to get it out. A 24-week-old baby would have lived, and yet at 22 weeks, we think it's okay to rip them apart limb by limb. It's amazing. It's amazing. Amazing in a not good way. And it was so eye-opening, that experience, and just even trying to process that could have been our baby. Not that we ever entertained that idea, but the fact that it could have been is just so heart-wrenching. So, back to the story at hand. So we got through that first surgery. We started to kind of get a stride of what NICU life is going to be like. We were living in the Ronald McDonald Ronald McDonald house right down the road from the hospital, because the hospital floor unit wasn't large enough for parents to stay with the children. And so the one night, I think it was day 7, I was in the room and I was pumping, because it was the one thing I could do for my baby. Even though she wasn't even allowed to eat yet, she still hadn't had a bottle yet. But I was just like, no, I am going to do something, anything for this kid, because there was literally nothing else I could do. But I'm sitting there, it's 10 p.m., Dan's sleeping, the weight of the world is on me. My baby's, down the road a quarter of the mile, all by herself in an isolette, and I'm just broken. At rock bottom. And I just remember having this very real prayer with God of just saying, Lord, where are you in all of this? Why have you abandoned me? And I wrote, I'm a prayer journal person. That's kind of my thing. That's how I get it out of my head and out of my heart and onto paper. And so I wrote out this 3-page journal, just basically being like, where are you, God? And what was amazing was I got to page 4, and my pen kept flying, but this time it wasn't my words anymore. This time it was Jesus writing through me. And I know that's crazy to think, but my pen just kept writing, and as I read this to you, you will know these are not my words. These are his, and it was just amazing. He said on December 7th, 2017, Emily, my beloved, I love you. I have not left you. I will not abandon you. I have not forsaken you. I am with you through these hard times. I have sent literally hundreds of people to be my hands and feet for you, Daniel and Charlotte. I brought you and Daniel together for a reason and with great purpose. I have formed Charlotte between you. Love her, love Dan, and most of all, love me. Do not shut me out in your hurt, for I am the great healer. Come to me, you who are weary, and I will give you rest. I am strong enough to bear your pain, your hurt, and even your anger. My love is much bigger than any of those things. Don't try to control the situation. Trust me, and your only job is to love me and love your family. Follow me. I will heal you, all three of you. Trust me, your loving Father, Abba. So, that's what got me through, honestly, was just I kept coming back to, he said he's going to heal her. I don't know what that looks like, but he's going to heal her. And what I realized in that night, too, was healing doesn't necessarily mean what I think it means. It doesn't mean she's just going to, all of a sudden tomorrow be okay and the doctors are going to unhook all the wires and say, you just go home, she's fine. That's probably not what's going to happen. Healing might even look like her dying and going to heaven. And maybe that's even the best healing for her. And it was such an incredible kind of like humility realization of just letting go even more and just like, okay, God, she's yours. Whatever healing needs to look like, let it happen and give me the grace to handle it. And then he said, I've literally sent hundreds of people to be my hands and feet. And is that not the case or what? Holy cow. This basket is a basket full of cards. And I know it doesn't have them all, but it has most of them that people sent just in those first few months of Charlotte being alive. And, I never even told you, we named her Charlotte, by the way. And just the love and the outpouring kept coming. People brought meals. People paid for our housing at Ronald McDonald. People came to visit. And they, weren't even allowed to see Charlotte because she was in this level 4 high-risk NICU where nobody was allowed to come in. And so they would just come and sit in the hallway to get a glimpse of us for 5 minutes, And people would send gas money and they would send Starbucks. And the love just came from every corner of the earth, it felt like. And at one point I was told people in Brazil were doing the rosary for Charlotte. It was insane. And it just blew us away. Every time we were hungry, a hot meal showed up. Every time we had a pile of laundry, somebody showed up and just took it to their home to wash it and brought it back with a note and fresh linens. It was insane. So when he said, I will provide, and an army of people are there to be your hands and feet, like, holy cow. Yeah, he blew us away. And I think what I realized as I was preparing for this talk is I think Dan and I are pretty unique in the support system we have. We have incredible family, a very large family on both sides. We have, friends, we have all of that, and I'm going to venture to say most people don't. And so I feel so blessed and humbled, and also it reminds me, I think we have no room for judgment towards people who feel stuck when they don't know what to do and they're in this hard moment of, do I abort or don't I? Now, I'm not saying it's okay, but I think there's no room for judgment, only room for love. And I was doing some research, 1 in 4 women have had an abortion by the time they're 45. There's people all around us who've had abortions. 1 in 5 pregnancies in the U.S. end in abortion. 1 in 5. And I think our only response that is appropriate is an immense amount of love and mercy and grace and supporting them and loving on them. And how do we come alongside them and be the hands and feet of God so that maybe they can feel equipped to raise a child like Charlotte, I know I'm so blessed because we had financial stability. Were we made of money? Absolutely not. But were we in a safe place that we knew we could bring on a child and we had insurance and we could handle it? Yes. Did we have a home with heat and lights? Yes. Did I have family who would support my decision to keep the baby? Yes. All these things. And the other thing a doctor told me when I was preparing to launch Charlotte's Hope Foundation, he said, not everybody has a Dan. He's so right. Not everybody has a husband who's going to stand with you and be right up there, elbows deep, helping you navigate the insane life of raising a child with medical complexities. So I'm not saying all of this to say it's okay to abort. What I'm saying is that so many women and men find themselves in these horrible situations that honestly I can't even imagine, can't even fathom. And it just breaks my heart for them, and it makes me want to love on them so much. makes me want to give them so much love and mercy, so much grace. And so I just hope that I encourage you that, there is no room for judgment. And I don't even know, there's not even room for this polar opposite political stance of pro-life, pro-support, or pro-choice. I'm not saying that, we should all be either or whatever, but what I'm saying is maybe there's something in the middle. Maybe we could be pro-support. And what I mean by support is coming alongside those parents and saying, let's help you. It's not enough to say, eat well, and then not feed people. You got to feed them, So if we're going to say abortion's not okay, well, then what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do to go help those parents, help those families to feel like they can, in fact, raise those children? Kids with medical complexities really only make up about 4% of abortions. Most of them are for other reasons. Although I couldn't figure out the number of, of the population who have a medical complexity or an anomaly, how many of those are aborted? I don't know. I'm sure that's quite much larger than 4%. But it is definitely, a reality. And so I just say that it's a silent war. It's a deadly war. It's a war that surrounds us. It's all around us. We run into people all the time who have had abortions. And the more we can just meet them with so much love and so much grace and try to come alongside them to help them to choose life, to know that life is a gift, not a given. So, okay, back to the story, and I better wrap it up because I'm running out of time. But I should have probably prepped you for that picture. Hold on, let me prep you for that picture. Okay, so we were scheduled for a urology surgery to be able to resolve the kidney issue. She had already had 2 procedures to temporarily relieve the urinary system issue, but we needed something more permanent. So at 6 weeks old, she was scheduled to do this basically urinary reconstruction. And then at 3 days before that procedure was scheduled, the doctors decided, nope, we have got to go in and deal with that cyst that's in the abdomen. It's a bigger issue than the kidneys at the moment. So that's when we did this LADS procedure, so they discovered that her whole GI system was backwards, flipped around completely. So they flipped the whole thing over. They removed the appendix just because it was on the wrong side, and they figured, if she gets appendicitis, no one will know it. So they took that out. And while they were at it, they removed this cyst that turned out to be a choledochal cyst-ish, kind of. Nothing is ever quite what you think it would be with her. It's always unique. So they were like, it's kind of this, but it's kind of that. So we called it this, but it's really not. We don't know. She's unique. So anyway, they removed it. They reconstructed her biliary tree, reconstructed the liver, took out the gallbladder because it was completely malformed. And this is the result. The next day, I got a call at 2 a.m. I missed it. I was sleeping. Dan got it. He went to the NICU. And at 4 a.m., I finally woke up to pump and found Dan was gone. And I had these voice messages from the neonatologist saying, Emily, we think your daughter's having seizure activity. You need to come. This is the day after her, I think it was an 8-hour procedure or possibly longer. As you can see, you can't even see the baby under all of this. She's got heart leads. She's got EEGs monitoring for seizure activity. She's got a breathing tube, which whenever she would try to cry, you could see it, but you couldn't hear it because it was laying on her vocal cords. She had catheters coming out of every angle of her. She had the nephrostomy tubes, the blood pressure cuff, she's got 3 IVs, a Broviac line, all these things. And remember, our way of holding her was cupping her head, and now we can't even do that. So at this point, I'm just I thought I was rock bottom before. Now I'm totally rock bottom because I can't touch her. I can't even talk to her because it hurts. When you're in so much pain, even sound hurts. And so you can see us sitting over here we can't do anything but sit here and hear all the doctor's theories of why she may or may not be having seizure activity. She had 2 blood transfusions within that 12-hour period. And it was just, this was the moment where we really didn't know if she would pull through. And they were trying to find that perfect balance of sedating but not terminating, which is a very hard balance on a 6-pound baby. So I just busted out of the NICU, and I went to the nearest room I could find that had no one in it. It was a public waiting room. Of course, it's like 6 a.m., so nobody's there. And I just started wailing. I, sat down like this and put my hands on my knees and just started sobbing. And all that would come out was, "Oh God, oh God, oh God." I didn't know at the time if it was a curse or a prayer. I wasn't sure, but it just came out. And the social worker came. I think they sent her out because they were like, "I don't know what's going on out there. You should probably go figure that out." So she came out and she was like, "Emily, what can I do for you? How can I help?" And I said, "I just need to cry." Because again, if you have been in the hospital, there's just like no room to go to just cry it out, And so she was like, "Okay." And she did the most loving thing anyone could have done at that moment. She grabbed a sheet of paper, scribbled on it, "Do not disturb," and taped it up on the public waiting room and shut the door. And I just sobbed for a while. But I think it really was my best prayer I've ever made or ever had. It was so much from the heart, so much just like, I have no words anymore. All I know is that I am totally empty. I have nothing. I've got nothing. And here I am, God. She did pull through. Here's her scar to show it. Look at that smile. Well, not really a smile, but adorable anyway. So she did pull through, and we made it out of the NICU. It was 2.5 months. She had 5 surgeries while in the NICU, and within 2 weeks of leaving the NICU, we had to go back for a following surgery. But before we did that, we knew 2 weeks after we left the NICU that they were going to be fixing the cleft lip. And so the very night before that surgery, we went and got professional photos. And I'm so glad we did. I'm so glad we did, because that smile is just my favorite. I miss it a lot. One of my mom's friends actually sewed this sweater for her, and I love it because I think it couldn't be more true, that she is proof that God answers prayers. She's endured many, many surgeries. In fact, she's had 13. How did that go? She had 11 by the time she was 2.5. She's had 13 now. She has 2 more before the end of the year. We'll probably have at least 5 more after that by the time she's 18. But she's walking, she's talking, she's a miracle. She's running around. She loves to dance. She dotes on her siblings. She is developmentally probably about 6 months behind all of her peers, which is nothing short of a miracle, having been under anesthesia, I don't know, at least 25 times. It's absolutely amazing. So she has pulled through. She does have over 20 specialists. We're in and out of the hospital on a weekly basis. We've got 3 different hospital systems monitoring her. It's insane. It's absolute insanity, but she is doing great. Okay, before I get off on a tangent about her and get all excited. Unfortunately, this is a very common scene we're really used to. We've seen so many surgeries. You can see this is this is actually not an operating room, though it looks like one. This is the cath lab, but it's very similar to an operating room. You can see her on the monitor. She's getting ready to go under, and it's surreal. We've seen it way too many times. But looking at Charlotte that day when I got to hold her, and ever since then, whenever I, every once in a while I get this opportunity, I really see the face of God in her. She brings to life what it means to be made in the image and likeness of God. I remember sitting there rocking her, and I'm, thinking about all these things about dismemberment and 24 weeks and 22 weeks and blah, blah, blah. But I'm looking at her, and I'm just like, there is something astounding about you, and I'm not sure what it is, but I feel like I am in the presence of the Lord when I'm with you. And I think the reality is that's the case for all of us. We are all image bearers of Christ, right? If we go back to Genesis, it says we are all made in the image and likeness of Christ, in the image and likeness of God. And it actually says, let us make humankind in our image and in our likeness. So why is there plural when it's only God? And I really started looking into this, and I realized it's because it's Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It's the Trinity from the very beginning. So who were we made in the image and likeness of? We're made in the image and likeness of love, of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, this cycle of love. And so, of course, Charlotte makes the image and likeness of God, come to life because she embodies love, and so do all of us. And I think that, my friends, is how we go to war in this silent and deadly battle against life. That is how we do it, by starting to recognize ourselves as the image bearers of Christ, and then also seeing other people as image bearers of Christ. It radically changes how you treat people, how you see them, how you think about them, and it makes your compassion go through the roof. You might cry a lot, or maybe that's just me. But if we can start seeing people as the gift that they are from God, it radically changes things. And then it's not, well, when does life start? And when is there a heartbeat? And no, life is gift. It is not a given, and we are all image bearers of Christ. And when we think like that, it also radically changes how we think about people who maybe have had abortions. It allows us to start loving on them and having so much compassion and coming alongside parents who find themselves in unexpected or unwanted pregnancies, and just trying to support them as best as we can so that they feel like they can, in fact, keep that child. So Charlotte is very much alive, and she's almost 5, and she's the apple of her daddy's eye. I think he'll be okay with me telling you that almost every night he tucks her in and starts crying about the fact that she's here, she's ours, she's alive, she's a miracle. And I will say, almost every night we think about the fact that we could have terminated, and it's devastating to even let your brain go there, right? Just to think of the loss of her, of hope, of life that would have been lost if we'd have lost her. She's very much alive. Now, I'm not saying it's not without its hardships. She has pain daily. She's, got treatments constantly. Last week, we had 3 treatments going on the living room floor all at once. We had a respiratory treatment. We had a urinary treatment going on and a GI treatment all at the same time because, we got to get stuff done and get the other 2 in bed and yada, yada. And Liam, our 3-year-old, was on the floor with his hand on her while she was in the middle of the treatment because that's always his position whenever she's doing something. He's right there with her. He doesn't say anything, but he has to physically touch her. She's often like, get off of me. But what I love about, having this sibling interaction is they are learning empathy from a very early age, and it is beautiful to watch. It's heartbreaking, too, because they are unfortunately seeing way more than I wish they would. But I suppose there's trade-offs, right? So, with that, before I go forward, I was thinking, and I'll try to make this quick. I was thinking the other day, what would life have looked like if we had terminated? So I wrote it down. It was hard to write down. If we had opted for abortion, we would not have witnessed such suffering that our daughter endures with treatment, symptoms, and setbacks. We would not be in and out of the hospital weekly. We would not have stacks of medical bills. I would probably still be able to work full time. Dan and I wouldn't have the strain on our marriage that this brings. We wouldn't have needed hundreds of people's help to be able to survive. We wouldn't be up all hours of the night providing treatments and surgery recovery and administering all these things. We probably would have gone on to have normal pregnancies with healthy children. We probably would have been able to afford that house we were looking for so long ago but never were able to buy. And the list goes on. But you know what? None of that matters at all. Because now we look and think, if we had opted to abort, we would probably miss out on that. Well, we would definitely miss out on that front row seat of watching God perform absolutely amazing miracles that are just, I can't even try to recount in 45 minutes the miracles we've seen. We would not have Charlotte, which is an unfathomable thing. I can't even imagine it. We would not have her life, her love, and her joy filling our every day. If we would have said no to the invitation from God to follow this path he laid before us, not that I think he made her sick, but I think he made good out of her sickness, we would have missed out on the calling he placed in our life to serve so many other parents who have children with medical complexities. We would have missed out on her hope, her go-to saying every time she's in pain, which is daily, and when she can see me being in pain, watching her in pain, she'll be like, "I'll be better tomorrow, Mama. It'll be better tomorrow." If we would have aborted, we would have went on with our day-to-day not knowing what life could have been like if we had not risked the unknown. We might have had the bigger house, but it sure would have been a lot emptier, and I would have missed my calling and my purpose to come alongside other parents. Our marriage wouldn't have had the chance to strengthen under such fire. And thank God it has strengthened so much. We would have missed seeing hundreds of people becoming the hands and feet of God, and to get to see them at their best, as God's messengers of love. We would have been left lying awake at night wondering what life could have been like had we still given Charlotte a chance. And our healthy children would have missed out on the lessons of empathy and love they receive every day from watching Charlotte. So it was worth it 1,000,000 times over, and I am excited at the opportunity that hopefully God will bring us to come alongside other parents and help them choose life too. So we've launched Charlotte's Hope Foundation, myself and a partner who has a child with bladder exstrophy, and which is where the bladder develops outside of the body. Sorry, I just throw these things out because it's my normal everyday. Like, oh yeah, bladder exstrophy, you all know what that is, right? But anyway, Charlotte's Hope Foundation, the goal here is to come alongside parents and caregivers and to give them the hope that they need to provide their child with the best optimal quality of life. And many parents we serve will have children with terminal illnesses, that aren't going to make it. Or they'll have children that may or may not make it, like Charlotte, or, it'll be a whole spectrum. But, and so we're very excited to come alongside them and help them learn how to be their child's best advocate in the medical system, and just learn how to grow into this role of medical manager as parents. It's a role that no one sets out to have, but if you are a parent of a medically complex child, you are more than capable of doing it, and we can't wait to come alongside these parents and help them know that they are capable, they can do it. And part of it is, too, and this is such a God thing, I had no intention of writing a book about this at all, but one thing led to another, and this God conversation, where I'm told, you need to talk to this person, you need to talk to this person. I'm like, okay, well, the doors keep opening. I'm just going to keep walking. And at one point, somebody said, you need to talk to this publisher. And I was like, why? And so we met, and now we have a book. A year later. So She is Charlotte is coming out in a month, and I'm very excited about it. It's basically the story from the 20-week ultrasound to the time we left the NICU. It's the story of the spiritual growth, the physical, and the mental just journey of it all from my perspective. So we're very excited for all of that. And I just pray that, as we leave here tonight, we feel inspired to come alongside the efforts for respecting life, and that we find our way. It's not enough to say abortion's not okay. We have to get involved. We have to roll up our sleeves, and we have to do something. We can't just say, eat well, and then not feed the people, And so I'm excited. We have a reception downstairs with lots of different opportunities to see ways you can get involved in the community. I'll be down there too. I would love if you would want to come up and introduce yourself and talk a little bit. But I'm just grateful for your time, and I just hope that we all walk away remembering that life is a gift, not a given. So thank you very much. Oh, and I think we're doing Q&A. If anybody has any questions. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That's a fabulous question. She asked about the leap of faith to go on and have other children. We have 3 others, 1 in heaven and two others with us. After Charlotte was born and I got to hold her and they whisked her away, I grabbed Dan. And when you're on the high after delivery, it doesn't last very long, but for a few minutes, you're on this high that you climb this mountain. I was like, Dan, let's have another one. And he was like, Emily, let's try this one off. So I'm different, is my point. You know what, though? It's been a while. You would think my natural reaction to our experience would be to have no more children. And for plenty of parents, that is the reaction, and that is perfectly fine. Like, if that is what you discern that God is calling for your family, then all for it. But for me, this experience made me fall in love with life so much. It made me just fall in love with the fragility of life, the fragility of babies. The fact that any of us develop normally is amazing. That any of us have survived is astounding. We are all walking, talking miracles. Charlotte's not the only one. And so it just set my soul on fire to have more. Poor Dan's like, let's pace it for a minute, you know? So we actually did go on to have another child who we did unfortunately miscarry. And we buried her. Her name is Lillian. And that was absolutely so hard. I think we were blessed with the next two before we knew what would happen. It kind of happened fast. But to me, it set my soul on fire for life. And it, as Paul said, made me want 20. Not quite 20, but 20-ish. But I say that with so much respect for parents who discern not to or decide, that it's best not to. I think that there is no right answer. It's whatever God calls your family to do and whatever is going to be best for your family. Absolutely, that's the best way. So that's a great question. Yeah, it'll be on Amazon. And if you're interested in the book, unfortunately, I was hoping to get the pre-order link ready tonight, but it's not ready yet. But I do have a form on my table that you can write your email, and I'll email you in the next couple weeks when the pre-order is ready. But it'll be on Amazon. It'll be on my website. It'll be on charlotteshopefoundation.org. Yeah, if you want to follow along with Charlotte's Hope Foundation launch or get the book when it's out or whatever, you can just come down and see me at the table and we'll get your email address. And I promise I won't inundate you with email, just when there's relevant things. Any other questions? Thank you all so much.
Can you go back to the life. And you go down the steps right here.